Okay, so in this lesson, we're going to continue to factorise. We're going to continue to put things into brackets. So if you have a look at the top of the page I get you to look at today, we're actually going to start with something that looks like this and work out how to put it into two brackets. Okay, we can always use FOIL or our rectangles to go back the other way and expand it. But if we want to factorise, which is what we're doing today, there's a little trick that we need to do looking at the numbers that we've got. So in the warm-up that hopefully you've had a chance to look at before we start this lesson, I'm just going to go back over these three questions because this is sort of what we're going to be doing. I am trying to choose two numbers first of all that multiply to give 24. So if I start with my factors of 24, they're the numbers that multiply together to give 24. So the factors of 24, we've got 1 and 24, we've got 2 times 12, we've got 3 times 8, we've got 4 times 6, and that's it. But I want the pair that when you add them up adds to give 11. And the only combination that adds to give 11 is 3 and 8. So my two numbers are 3 and 8. Okay, that's okay if they're all positive. That works out nicely. Sometimes people find it a little bit trickier if you've got a negative. So in number 6, two numbers that multiply to give negative 42. So if you get a negative answer, you've got one's positive, one's negative. So if I think about 42, I've got 1 and 42. I'm going to ignore the negative for now because I know one of them would have to be negative. I've got 2 lots of 21, 3 lots of 14. I think that will be. I'm going to have 4 not going into it. 5 doesn't divide in, but 6 times 7. Now keep in mind one of those numbers is positive and one's negative. I don't know which. The second clue is that they have to add to give positive 1. So the difference between them is positive 1. So they're only 1 apart, which means it's got to be this combination here with 6 and 7. And the negative really needs to be on the 6. Because when I do negative 6 and I add 7, I get positive 1, which is what they wanted. So that's my two numbers, negative 6 and positive 7. In the last one here, two numbers this time that multiply to give 80. So my factors of 80 are 1 and 80, 2 and 40. 3 is not going to go in evenly, so we'll ignore that. 4 lots of 20. 5 is going to go into 80. So 80 divided by 5 goes 16 times, so 5 and 16. 6 into 80 doesn't go. 8 times 10, and 9 doesn't go into 80. So this time they've got to multiply to give 80. The fact that they multiply to give a positive answer tells me that they must be the same sign. Either they're both positive or they're both negative. And the clue here is if they're adding to give a negative answer, then here they must be both negative numbers. So all these would need to be negative, because when you times two negatives, you get a positive. And then when I do negative 8 minus 10, this is the combination. Okay, so I've got negative 8 and negative 10. So if you're able to choose those values, then you should be okay starting these questions today. So if you want to pause it here and copy down what I wrote, but I have said to factorise a trinomial of the form x squared plus, now I don't know what b is, I've just called it b. It's going to be a value. I'll highlight that one colour, and c is just a number on the end. And that's what it's talking about here. So you're going to look for numbers that multiply to give the number on the end, but they've got to add to give the number in the middle. And I've said that you can check by expanding. So if you want to pause here, copy that down, and then I'll take you through the examples using that method. Alright, so in example 1, let's have a look. We want to factorise x squared plus 5x plus 6. So this is my b value, and this is my c value. So I want to start with the 6, start with the number on the end. I want numbers that multiply to give 6, positive 6, to give this value. And they need to add to give the value with the x, which in this case is 5. So it's a bit like the questions we did in the warm-up. I want you to think of two numbers that times to give 6, add to give 5. So start with the 6. Start with the numbers that multiply to give 6. So the factors of 6 are 1 and 6, 2 and 3. That's it. Now I want the combination that adds to give 5. That's the 2 and the 3. So what I'm going to have is that it equals 2 brackets. To get the x squared at the front, it must have been x times x. And the two numbers are positive 2 and positive 3. This question had no negatives. That makes it a lot nicer. Plus 2 plus 3. Okay, and that is your answer. So for some people, you need to do a few of these to start to see what happens. We can check it. You don't need to do this, but if you're in a test, it might be an idea to check your answer. You would use FOIL. So I'll just do this in an extra colour. To see if your answer is right, if you're not sure, first, x times x is x squared. Outside, x times 3 is the 3x. 2 times x is the 2x. And 2 times 3 gives the 6. So that does give x squared plus 5x plus 6, which is what we started with. So yes, it works. All right, so you can always do a check and know if you're right. So A and B should be easier than the others because they've only got positive values. So we're going to go through the same method for B. So in B, let me highlight the number at the front here and the number at the back. So you don't have to write the steps that I'm doing at the side all the time, but if it helps, please do. So we want numbers that multiply to give 10. So the number on the end is what they multiply to give, and it needs to add to 7, the value in front of the x. So you're looking at the factors of 10. So my factors of 10, I've got 1 and 10, 2 and 5, no other options. Pick the pair that adds to 7. That's the 2 and the 5. So over here it equals, I'm going to have 2 brackets. To get x squared at the start, it's got to be x times x. And then one bracket's got 2, one bracket's got 5. There were no negatives, these are all positives. Okay, and that's your answer. And again, you could use FOIL and expand it back out, just to check that you do get that. So A and B should be a bit more straightforward than the next couple that might have some negatives in there. In C, same thing. I've got 2 and I've got negative 8. Remember, the negative belongs to the 8. So we're looking for numbers that multiply to give negative 8 and add to give positive 2. So multiply to give the number on the end, add to give the number that's with the x. So think about the negative 8. To get negative 8, you'd need 1 and 8, and one of them would have to be negative. So it could be negative 1 and positive 8, or it could be positive 1 and negative 8. Also to get 8, 2 and 4. It could be a negative on the 2, or it could be a negative on the 4. They're the only combinations. We want the combination that adds to give positive 2, so the bigger number needs to be positive. So the negative 1 and the 1 and 8, there's no way they're going to add in any way to get a number of 2, but negative 2 and 4 is the combination that gives positive 2. If I do the 2 and negative 4, it adds to give negative 2, so bigger answer positive. So once you've worked out what your two numbers are, you've got x. Let's see what we wrote. We've got x, the minus is with the 2, and the 4 is positive, so that means x plus 4. Okay, so if that's the one I circled, negative belongs to the 2, 4 has no sign, it means it's positive. So that's C. Let's have a look at D. We want to multiply to give negative 7, and we want to add to give 10. Sorry, other way around. We want to multiply, I highlighted them the wrong way, multiply to give positive 10, and when you add them together you get negative 7. So the fact that they're adding to a negative tells me, well, one's got to be positive. They've both got to be negative because they're multiplying to give a positive answer. So because of this, they're both going to be negative. Because they multiply, or times, to give a positive. So if your answer on the end is positive, they're both the same sign. So if you want to, you can put in here, because they're multiplying to give a positive, it's going to be x and x, and they're both minus here, because a negative by negative gives positive 10. So now if I think about the factors of 10, I've got 1 and 10, I've got 2 and 5, they're the only options, and we've said that they've both got to be negative. And now hopefully you can see this combination here, negative 2 take 5 does give negative 7. So a negative 2 and a negative 5 in each bracket. Okay, so the first two were all positive, the next one had a positive negative, and the last one here, both are negative. Now the final one is extension, so if you just want to copy it down, don't stress too much. This is not a C standard question. We have to do an extra step that makes it complex. So I'm just going to put a note. What we did last week was look for the highest common factor first. Because if I look at it at the moment, I've got this 2 out the front of x squared, and all the other ones that we did just said x squared. So what I'm going to do is state that there is a highest common factor. If I look at all these values out the front, they're all even, so my highest common factor is 2. So what you do is you take that out first. So take out the highest common factor first, and then it should turn into like the ones we've done. So if I take the 2 out from the x squared, I'm just left with x squared, because 2 times x squared gives 2x squared. I've put the 2 out the front, I still need a minus x, because 2 times negative x does give negative 2x. And this needs to make negative 12, so I need a minus 6. And now if I look in that bracket, I'm going to try and think of two numbers that multiply to give negative 6, that add to give negative 1. So we need to multiply to give negative 6, so they're two different signs, one's positive, one's negative, and they've got to add to give negative 1, because negative x means it's negative 1x in here. Hopefully you can see that. Just try and write it a bit clearer. So one's positive, one's negative. So to end up with this 6, you could have had 1 and 6, 2 and 3. One's positive, one's negative. When I put them together, I get a negative answer. So the bigger number has to be negative. So I'm thinking it's going to be 2 and 3, because if I put a negative on the 3, 2 minus 3 does give you negative 1, which is what we wanted. I had to add to give the negative 1. So that's the combination I'm going to be after here. So one bracket has the positive 2 and the negative is with the 3. Alright, but that one it's got that additional step, so it's a little bit harder, even if you just copy down that solution. So go back over any of those that you're not sure of, and then in the exercise 8F, the ones that are in bold are the ones that I want you to try. Definitely, you should be able to do these, okay, because they are just, or question 3 are all positive values, so you should be able to work out your brackets. 4, 5, 6, okay, these ones you just need to be careful. They've got a combination of positive or negative, but that's where I want you to get up to as a minimum, okay, the ones that I've put in bold. If you're finding them okay, you might be able to get through a bit faster. I'd really like you to try some of these later questions, like question 9 definitely, and you should be able to do 10, 11, just depends how far you can get through the questions further down. All right, but they're the ones I'd like you to do as a minimum. Get up to question 6 if you can, or at least be starting that one. Okay, but 2 and 3 you should be right to start hopefully, and then see how you go from there.